Alabama starts the SEC schedule this Saturday, and they'll take on Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, former offensive coordinator. Lane Kiffin, known for the mind games, and he certainly seems to be playing one right now with Alabama and defensive coordinator Kevin Steele. We're going to talk about that and a lot more right here on Bama Tailgate Daily. And I want you guys to be on our roster. It's really easy to do and free. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. Lane Kiffin was Alabama's offensive coordinator, as you know, from 2014 to 2016. He was really good at the job. Blake Sims won an SEC championship as a quarterback. Jay Coker came in, won a national championship as a QB. And Alabama was on the verge of winning another national championship. And then Lane Kiffin had a very weird exit from Tuscaloosa on his way to coach a team down in Florida. And Alabama ended up losing the championship game to Clemson down in Tampa. And I think if he would have been there and if he would have been focused on the job, they would have won a national championship. I'm sure Nick Saban wouldn't say it out loud, but I think Lane Kiffin gets on his nerves. Lane Kiffin loves to talk and just try to prod Nick Saban. You've seen him do it on Twitter, sometimes in press conferences, because he knows that Nick Saban doesn't like all of that nonsense. He doesn't like distractions. And Lane Kiffin is the master of distractions and nonsense. I mean, look at the way his season ended last year. Had a really good team, and then all of a sudden he was going to Auburn, right? Well, I don't know whether he was or he wasn't. That's here nor there. His team, though, lost the final 4 games of the season, and he's trying to be more focused this year. He said that in the offseason, he'd love to beat Alabama. And one thing that he did to try to get that job done is he added a defensive coordinator, a guy that he wasn't a coordinator with at Alabama, but a couple of years later, Pete Golding took over the job. And from 2018 until last year, Golding was with Alabama. Now, why would you go from Alabama to Ole Miss as a defensive coordinator, as any coordinator? Well, it's because Alabama didn't want you there anymore. And this guy was much maligned, and he was the scapegoat a lot. Fair or unfair, the defense played consistent. It felt like at times, though, that he was managing the decline. So you got Lane Kiffin, and you got Pete Golding, and they've got an opportunity to come back to Tuscaloosa and take on the Crimson Tide. Now, why am I talking about these guys? Well, let me tell you why. Lane Kiffin was basically asked about taking on Kevin Steele's defense, right? And he says, no, it's not Kevin Steele's defense. T-Rob's calling the plays. Travaris Robinson, who's the defensive backs coach, who he says that he remembers coaching from South Carolina, and he does things different than Kevin Steele. That prompted Nick Saban to address the rumor. I'm going to play that for you, and then we're going to talk about it. But it put Saban kind of in a unique spot where he's talking about this rumor that, you know, that his defensive coordinator really isn't a defensive coordinator.
He's earned the opportunity to be the quarterback. On this other thing that I hear floating around out there, I'm sure you've seen the same reports that I've seen, is Kevin Steele is the defensive coordinator. He has all the defensive coordinator responsibilities. The only thing that we tried to improve on from an administrative standpoint was game day administration of getting the signals in quicker. All right, so that's the only thing that, you know, we worked on together as a staff. The whole staff made a contribution to it. And I think it was a lot better in this game than it was in the Texas game.
So there you go. Nick Saban talks about the rumors, and obviously he doesn't feel like a change has been made. So why is Lane Kiffin doing it? And again, he doubled down again and said that, you know, it's T-Rob and it's not Kevin Steele calling the defense. Well, there's a couple of things at work here. First off, it could be T-Rob calling the defense, right? And why wouldn't they know? I mean, think about it. Pete Golding coached with a lot of the people that are still at Alabama and still on that defensive staff. They did look at film. But what Sabin says makes a lot of sense, because think about the Texas game where Alabama was just standing around waiting on the plays to get in, and Texas was taking advantage of that as Alabama was getting their butts whooped in the fourth quarter. And they obviously want to streamline things to make it better. So there could be something there. And a lot of times you'll hear this kind of talk behind the scenes, you know, hey, this guy's really doing this and this and that. Lane Kiffin loves this opportunity. because it provides another distraction that Nick Saban has to deal with, and he hates dealing with distractions. So think about this now. He's dealing with who is really the defensive coordinator, which he addressed at his press conference earlier this week. Then you got the rumor, or maybe not rumor, that some of the players didn't play their best because they weren't happy with the quarterback decision. So what does that mean? I mean, that's a scary thought for Alabama moving forward, if that's even true. And that came from Late Kicks Josh Pate, and he says Alabama hasn't even reached out to him and said that that wasn't true. So Sabin kind of talked about that in the press conference. Alabama finally named a starting quarterback, and I don't think that there was anything wrong with trying to figure out who that person was based on the 3 games and what we saw. But, that'll be one less distraction. And then you got the players-only meeting that happened after that horrible performance against South Florida, where Alabama just didn't look dominating like Alabama teams have been for over the years, right? So what does this all mean? Well, what I hope it doesn't mean is that we're mixing in now for the worst team in the Saban era. You got all of these distractions. Obviously, what he said, Lane Kiffin, about the defensive coordinator got to Nick enough where he wanted to talk about it, or maybe he just answered it before anyone asked him that question. But if it would have been me, I would have just said, oh, yeah, we like to mix things up. I would have left it out there. Just why not? I mean, who cares? If it's not any of Ole Miss's business who's calling the plays, who the real defensive coordinator is or isn't. But I think that Lane Kiffin knows that Nick Saban he just doesn't like dealing with that kind of stuff. He'd rather just talk about it and move on. But see, the problem is that now he's addressed it, and now we're talking about it because it's become an issue, right? There's so many different things that this team needs to do before Saturday. But I think Nick Saban's the best coach of all times. And if there's a guy that can figure this out, it is Nick Saban. But think about the body of work that he's trying to do now. Trying to get an offense to go out on the field and succeed, which we haven't seen them do since the first game of the season against a bad Middle Tennessee State team, right? He's got a quarterback, and his offensive coordinator, 31-year-old Tommy Rees, now needs to dial up an offense that matches Jalen Milroe's skill set. Can he do that? Can they move the ball? How about the offensive line that gave up 5 more sacks against South Florida? They got to figure that out. Seth McLaughlin, the snapper, hey, you got to be able to snap the ball consistently throughout the game, right? He hasn't been able to do that. The defensive line doesn't get enough of a pass rush on the QB. And with Jackson Dart coming to Bryant-Denny on Saturday, Alabama's really got to put pressure on the quarterback, or they're not going to win the football game, you wouldn't think. Oh, and on top of that, you've got the other coach and your old coordinator trying to take advantage of maybe some knowledge that they got from someone inside the program, saying, hey, the guy that's supposed to be the coach isn't even the coach. So this is Nick Saban's toughest task ever. And it comes down to this: the players. It's up to the players. They've got to decide that they're going to hold the Bama standard. They've got to decide that they're going to do everything that they can to use all the God-given talent, which they have more talent than Ole Miss and maybe every other team in the country. But it comes down to them. And that's what we're going to see on Saturday. Are they going to be able to do that? And if so, is it the start of something really good? Or if Alabama loses the football game, this could be the beginning of the worst season that Nick Saban's had and that Alabama's had since 2007. And I don't even think that 2007 team would compare to this, just because we still had a lot of excitement and high expectations. We were on the other end of that. It was kind of like what Colorado's going through right there. 92,000 at the 8A game, all of these top recruits coming in. It was a different football program then than it is right now. But I've got trust in Nick Saban. I'm very curious to see how this turns out, and I know that you guys are as well. Hey, the promo code at the bottom of the screen from newlifeart.com is Bama Tailgate. And if you use Bama Tailgate, you can get the brand new 2023 New Life Art calendar, buy one, get one free. So it's almost a $30 value. And maybe with the holidays coming up, you can't beat one of those calendars with, all the great Daniel Moore images in there. And as I said, up until Sunday, you can use Bama Tailgate for buy one, get one free. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out, guys. And again, if you're not a member of our channel, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. This is Bama Tailgate Daily.